I'm gonna click here and I'll go. Okay, I apologize for like 30 seconds of dead air. That's what everyone wants. I am Jeff Ellis, for those who know me. If you don't, I'm not sure why you're watching, because it's not like I'm that popular. YouTube and or baseball writer. I used to write for 24/7 and Scout before they got rid of baseball, which is the truth of the matter. Specifically, my first ever paycheck I ever got for journalism of any kind was related to the draft. Back in the day at Indians Prospect Insider, RIP to that site. I made $100 for writing 40 draft capsules, or was it 50? That might have actually back when there was 50, and then eventually turned into a gig. I remember the first time I was told I'd get $400 a month for producing 15 articles. I think back now and I'm like, wow, it's really not that much. It felt like a ton. Not that I should go through the past and look negatively on things, but now I host Locked On Guardians, and unfortunately, that is a huge time commitment, 2 to 3 hours a day. So I just don't get the time I need to write. I am doing capsules over at Prospect Live, filling in, writing on guys there. Good group over there, so you can check out some of my written work on that site. I'll probably at some point do a audio version of the my big board, just because I don't have the time to write. As terrible as this is to say, but let's not bury the lead anymore. We're over a minute in. Let's do a mock on how I think this draft's going to play out. Now, for those, again, who are new to this, who are just looking for more draft info, I have spent years, my whole thing was don't buy into the smoke. Yes, I talk to agents. Yes, I have a few people, not as much as I used to, connected to teams. I felt like most of that information was wrong through the years. Especially this is the smoke time of year. We're going to see one writer say there's no chance this guy's getting past the top 15. Another writer saying he's not going in the first round, and everyone's lying to you. The writers aren't lying to you, but they're getting bad information. And I can tell a story where I was told 100% sure a pick was going to happen. I had a perfect mock. I felt really good going to that 9th pick in the draft, maybe it's 10th pick, and then that not happening. That player going about 9 spots after that, and realizing I had been leveraged late back when I wrote it at 24/7 to for a player's value. That stings. It happens. But what doesn't really tend to happen is historical data. So I'm going to be heavy on historical data. This isn't inside information. This is not me basing this on what I'm hearing. This is based on what these teams have done. It's number 1, Pittsburgh Pirates. I think it's Skeens or Cruz. I'd be surprised if it's not either of them. Skeens has pitched so well that I think there is a thought to taking him. Honestly, if you're the Pirates, a team that is maybe a little higher out of the gate than you expected, the high-end pitching, you don't draft for need, but the high-end pitching is not as much close to the majors. Like Skeens is a guy who legitimately could pitch next year. I could understand if they decide to switch and go to Skeens. I still think Cruz, but more and more, I think Skeens is every bit as good of a choice. So Dylan Cruz, 1 to the Pirates. 2 to the Nationals, whoever the Pirates don't take. I think 1-2 is pretty set, and it should be pretty set. Right now I have Skeens going there. The Nationals take quote-unquote falling talent is kind of their MO. If you go back and look, like Anthony Rendon was the guy who was supposed to be maybe the 1-1 in his class. They got him. You can go through and look at guys like Cade Cavalli, who people thought would go higher. Elijah Green, pardon me, my voice is, who had some 1-1 run at the start of the year. They kind of take that guy. Not that when you're picking 2, you don't really have that choice. I mean, that guy would technically be, who's that guy who was a top guy who slid? It's Chase Dollander. I don't think they're taking him. I think Skeens is the guy here. Texas. No. Why am I saying Texas? Because I want to get to Texas, because Texas is intriguing. We have Detroit next. Rough year for Detroit. Front office comes from the Giants, one of the most conservative front offices in baseball. If I am using that as a guide, Landon Frame, any solid guys from Purdue? I'm going to interrupt this, and someone actually hopped into the chat. Thank you, Landon. The best player from Purdue is Joe Whitman, who is actually at Kent now. He pitched all of 5 innings his first 2 years at Purdue. I've not spent too much time outside of that on Purdue baseball, but Joe Whitman, who was there for 2 years and is now at Kent, and is, in my opinion, the top left-hander in this class, a top 50 player for me. But going back to Detroit, Detroit has, bring this up on every podcast, Detroit Tigers fans are probably sick of it. You can comment below if you're one of those sick of this. The Tigers have drafted 3 shortstops in the history of the first round. The shortstop, the quarterback of the MLB draft, they've taken 3 of them. Last one being Scott Moore, who we all knew was going to move to third base. He wasn't a shortstop. So if you're looking at, a lot of people have had prep players to them. That conservative front office, it just seems Langford to me. And I think those guys, those top 3 are head and shoulders above the rest of the class. So I think it'd be a mistake to not go there. The old front office, I thought they made a mistake when they took Jackson Jobe a few years ago. New front office, I don't think they're going to do it here. Kyle Teal could be an interesting under-the-radar guy. Texas Rangers at 4. So a year ago, they did the weird Kumar Rocker thing. Before that, they had been pretty conservative in their recent drafts. But, which technically, I guess, taking Rocker is kind of conservative, but he was a massive underslot, so he could come back and get Brock Porter, who most people had as the top prep pitcher in the class. What's weird for Texas is they're picking 4th. They don't pick again, I think, till 108. So savings here could be useful because essentially they could come back in the 4th round, losing their 2nd and 3rd rounder for Eovaldi, which they don't regret. And DeGrom, I don't think they really regret that either. You're hoping he's going to come back and be DeGrom. But they can come back in the 4th round and get a massive talent because they're going to have tons of money to spend. Right now, I lean Walker Jenkins. He's just kind of the guy. He's bigger than Max Clark. He's been connected to them throughout. They've had some luck with some younger players of late, guys like Cole Winn, Owen White, some of those more developmental guys. And if they went college here, it'd be like Kyle Teal. I think they're prep. Twins at 5. I think it's college. Would I be shocked by a Shaw or Tommy Troy? More Troy. I think Matt Shaw has better power than he gets credit for. I think Kyle Teal. Yeah, another question in chat, so I'll take this moment to Fino, to Zach in chat. The interesting thing with the Twins is they take these sliding bats with power potential. Travis Larnach comes to mind with that. A year ago was just bad at ball data, though, which is Brooks Lee as a sliding performer. Chase Petty is the really weird one in the draft history. That's the one time they went prep arm high. They did give a lot of money. I'm blanking on the 3rd round. Blaine Enlow, who I really liked, who they paid like a 1st rounder the year they took Royce Lewis. Kirilloff has worked. Royce Lewis, I think, would work if he could ever stay healthy. I think it's college. I think Kyle Teal stands out here, and college bats always rise on draft day, and especially because we have so much. Every team probably has like Synergy Sports and gets all that advanced data that almost every program has. A college bat is so much safer right now than anything else. It's significantly safer. I'm not as high on Teal. I don't know if there's a plus trade on the board for him. Virginia guys, listen, the second most productive Virginia hitter, I believe, is still Mark Reynolds. It is a program they don't really teach always how to use the lower half. Mike Pappy came to Cleveland, and that guy was built like a tank, and I felt like it was all torsoing up for him, and it wasn't ideal. So Teal scares me a little, but it feels solidly like he is somewhere in this range. There's the door. We'll see if the kids come in loud. But I feel like there's a good chance that at this point, Kyle Teal is the player that probably makes the most sense. Oakland. They've been kind of mocked all over the place, but they love athletes. They went out of their way to get Estuary Ruiz. They have drafted so many. Kyler Murray, who didn't sign. They love these up-the-middle athletes. Who's the best up-the-middle athlete in this class? Enrique Bradfield. Now, he is not necessarily high connected with them, but Bradfield is their type of guy. He is that plus athlete. You can put him out there. He's going to run, play defense. He's a guy who it feels like he is rising a little bit late, even though he's not playing right now. But he has a chance to be a 70 defender with 80 speed. He's got good on-base skills. There's no power, but he just feels like a very Oakland type of selection to me. Reds at 7, I think it's a Dollander over Louder, and the reason is that is they do so well at pitcher development, and if everything works, if we can get Dollander back to where he was, he's better than Rhett Louder. And the Reds have done great work with Nick Boyle. They've done great work with other arms. They've really done a good job. That was a terrible developmental minor leagues for a while, and the Reds, credit to the people in charge there. They completely turned over that whole system. Like Cleveland would target guys in the Reds who were let go just to see if there's a little bit more. I think of Jake Paulson. I think about Scott Moss, guys like that. I don't know if they had any like big Red success story, but it was pretty clear it was not a great system. So I think with their developmental background, Dollander just makes too much sense. They should be able to get him back to that guy who, if he was pitching now like he had pitched last year, this would be a 4-horse race for the top of this class. Kansas City Royals at 8. There's been a lot of various players rumored with this pick. I'm going to stick with Jacob Wilson. I know it's not the most exciting. New GMs often can be a little more conservative. Wilson is a guy that was strongly connected there, great batted ball data, can play shortstop, good bloodlines. It's not the most exciting selection. Noble Meyer, I think, is the sleeper for me there. Back in the day, I'd always do a sleeper at every pick, so let me go back and do this. Let's reset. So I should probably write it down. This is what gets me in trouble in the past. Dylan Cruz 1, sleeper Skeens. 2, Skeens, sleeper Cruz. Basically, one or the other. I don't know if that really counts as sleeper. 3, Wyatt Langford, with the sleeper being Kyle Teal. Walker Jenkins at 4, sleeper Max Clark. 5, Kyle Teal, with the sleeper being Matt Shaw. 6, Bradfield, with the sleeper there being Max Clark, if they just go for ceiling and upside type. Red 7, Dollander, with the sleeper being Louder, and Royals say Wilson, with your sleeper being Noble Meyer. That means Max Clark is still on the board for the Rockies, but the weird thing right now at this point in this draft is they're really on college pitching. So it's like, would Kansas City take Clark and make this easier on me? Maybe. He hasn't been really mocked there as much. So here's the thing. Someone always falls. If someone's doing a mock and one of the 9 to 10 big names is hasn't fallen, then you've done it wrong. Because every year there's the Cam Collier, the Khalil Watson. Every year someone falls. Right now in this current not convection. That's a type of oven configuration. I've got Max Clark sliding. I have Rhett Louder going to the Rockies. I think they're going to take the best college arm, much like they did a year ago. He is the guy that some people think is the number 2 arm after Skeens. That is totally eye of the beholder, but it is going to be interesting to see where he goes, if he ends up going higher than Dollander or not. Marlins at 10. They've been linked to a lot of prep guys, even though they've got super conservative. I mean, last year's pick was not great because they went conservative, and they have a front office that that has to be feeling a little under the gun, but they're playing very well, so it's more that they need to make the postseason and make sure they can get there. Not that this pick really affects that. Looking at them as a team, this is the first time I'm kind of sitting here going, like, the conservative pick. Like, right now, if I'm looking at, let me just pull up the MLB board, as I like to call it, the consensus board. So Max Clark, Arjun Nimala are probably and Noble Meyer, your 3 big names. The problem with that is that's 3 prep guys. If you're in this situation here at 10, I think if you're talking a hyper-conservative team who is looking for a safe bet, it might be Jacob Gonzalez, the Ole Miss shortstop who had top 5 run before the year began. I think he seems like he's sliding a bit. Listen, he's not sexy. He doesn't do anything great. He's like the Kyle Teal of shortstops. But when you play a valuable position, I think that sends out. And Kyle Teal's a better athlete. Like I don't want to rag too much there, but I think that right now, I can't get over the fact that this is a highly conservative team. And yeah, two years ago was Kyle Watson. or Khalil Watson. I kept saying it wrong. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to put them on Max Clark and him being just too good to pass on, with the knowledge that they need more outfield help in general. They need more athleticism. And right now, if you're the front office, you're feeling pretty good. And if you take Max Clark and you sign him at 10, you're in a situation where, let's say you need to get help down the road, his trade value is going to stay pretty stabilized. Angels at 11 have been linked to prep and to college guys. They've leaned a little more college late in this situation. You're looking at kind of that next year with Braden Taylor, Jacob Gonzalez, Matt Shaw, Yohandy Morales. A lot of people really like Tommy Troy, and I've kind of thought that Troy could be their type of guy for a while. I've had him there in multiple mocks. So the Marlins, for their sleeper, is Gonzalez, just to clarify. So here at 11, I think Los Angeles Angels, Tommy Troy makes good contact. He moves quickly through the system. If you're looking for someone to pair with, Neto at second base and shortstop, I'm looking at that. Arizona, Arjun Namala feels like such their type of guy because they've gone for upside with Cullen. Hauk is a guy they've been heavily linked to. Both of them make a ton of sense here. He is a football recruiter, as a quarterback. Either of those guys here. I'm going to go with Hauk because I think he's a little bit harder to pin down, if I'm being honest. That's me being a little easier on myself. With Namala as a sleeper at that pick. I guess the Angels sleeper would have been Namala. Cubs. I've seen a lot of people talk prep with them, but they've been hyper conservative. Very conservative over the years. We still have Jacob Gonzalez on the board. There is a Matt Shaw on the board. And when I look at this, Matt Shaw feels like a very Cubs pick to me. I love Matt Shaw. I think that's a great pick for them. I think Matt Shaw makes a ton of sense there with Gonzalez being the sleeper. Red Sox. Hard team, right? They've drafted like the same guy the last 3 years. Do they feel under pressure to try to get someone who can move quicker? I feel like I've mostly seen college guys there, even though they have gone with prep players early. They're in a situation to see who's on the board, who's available, who's interesting, who's good. That front office, Chaim Bloom came from Tampa. Tampa did very well. Well, I don't know if they did very well, but they took a lot of prep shortstops, which is what they've done, and a lot of prep pitchers. And the prep pitcher hasn't been taken yet. Noble Meyer is still on the board. I think he makes a weird amount of sense to the Red Sox here, just based on where Bloom came from and developing some pitching in that system. If he feels like he's got the time to develop someone, I would lean towards him there. Namala is the number 2. White Sox. Interesting that all of a sudden they're switched to being a college-heavy link team. The draft has been more prep-related for them. You look at some of their recent selections when they like Colson Montgomery, Wes Kath. Last year was Noah Schultz, some high-ceiling guys. The way this draft has fallen, Arjun Namala feels too good to pass on. Brendan Taylor, sleeper, as kind of a safer third base type. But Namala just feels, if this is a team that is no longer, it used to be the most conservative team. The last few years have gotten a lot more prep heavy. Jared Kelly the year before that in the second round. They've taken big swings. Now, they haven't all worked out, but they've taken those swings. Namala would be a big swing. I think he's a top 10 talent, probably a top talent on most boards here at 15. 16, the Giants, who took the man, and I guess you're, like I said, Taylor's sleeper. Giants, 16, who is taking over the mantle of the most conservative team. It's the Giants. Jacob Gonzalez still being on the board should make this. They've taken so many college performers, guys who have kind of slid a bit in the college rankings as the year has gone on. Taylor's still on the board. You still have, those are kind of the big 3, right? Or the big 2 is Braden Taylor, Yohandy Morales, and Jacob Gonzalez. So Gonzalez there with Yohandy Morales is a bit of a sleeper. I think a lot of teams do like him. Baltimore. I like Bryce Eldridge to them, the two-way guy. They've gone for some ceiling. They've gone for power potential. When you look at Jurstad, you look, Holiday's got better power than a lot of people give him credit for. They were much more of a college-focused team, but I think they, Eldridge size and exit velocities, I think will appeal. the athleticism, the two-way skills. I think he is an interesting player to consider here. Brock Wilken is probably in that next tier as well, with Brendan Taylor. But I think Taylor's probably more the sleeper there, even though he doesn't have the big-time power. Taylor is still on the board. That's an easy pick for the Brewers. This is a team that goes college, and goes college bat heavy. So I think Brendan Taylor, TCU, Brewers, he's still on the board. It makes it an easy selection, as it were. Leaves you with kind of Yohandy Morales is and Brock Wilken are your two top college bats left. We're going to just kind of do a quick summation, 18 picks in. Top college pitcher, it's kind of eye of the beholder at this point, isn't it? It's probably Hurston Waldrep. Whitman, the lefty from Kent, might get some run in this range. A lot of prep guys like Colton Emerson, Walker Martin. We should probably, guys can discuss Thomas White. But we see college guys go earlier and prep guys slide. Gonzalez, Eldridge. So Yohandy Morales, maybe some discussion there. Tampa. Here's the thing with Tampa. I don't see them on Hurston Waldrep anywhere, but they've had such success with similar arms like his. They've liked big arms. They've taken prep arms. They've gone for ceiling. They've taken, a Shane McClanahan who had some injury concerns and some concerns with command in the secondaries, and they've turned him into a good pitcher, knowing how to develop that. I think Waldrep is too good for Tampa to pass on, because I think they can look at him and very clearly see a pathway to success. So, boom. Put him on the board there at 19. With a sleeper of Colt Emerson, was someone I mocked to them a few times. He just struck me as another guy that Tampa would like. Toronto, a team that can go all over the place. Which way do you lean if you're Toronto? Just again, if we're looking top college pitcher, now that Eldridge is off the board, you're probably looking a bit further down the board. I mean, Whitman's probably the guy who's had the most run as the next lefty or next pitcher on the board. It's a pretty weak pitching class. In terms of prep arms, hey, you could get Thomas White here. They took a prep arm. Sometimes it gets confused in my head. It was 2 years ago, or was it last year? I think it was last year was the prep arm, so they could go there. A lot of interesting bats. Nolan can't say his name. Chanel is there, who stands out. There's also the Kevin McGonigal's, the Colt Emerson types of the middle infielders. Brock Wilken, in terms of the college bats. Yohandy Morales. And would they go? I feel like Morales is kind of a guy who should be off the board, so I'm kind of tempted to put him there. For some reason, Thomas White just keeps coming back to me as a guy that I think they would like. So I'm going to have Thomas White go to the Blue Jays. Cardinals. Everything you hear someone say about the Cleveland Guardians are more so true about the Cardinals. They have gone heavy on prep. They use age-based models. They look at some of that advanced data, and they do like, athletes, but they also like incredibly smart players. Colt Emerson is the most common pick to the Guardians because he's a 17-year-old kid who has good hit tools. Oh, I misread that. I think he makes sense to the Cardinals for all the reasons that people mock him to the Cleveland Guardians. Seattle, Nolan Chanel here. They like, batted ball data. They have not had a problem. They took Tyler Locklear from VCU in the second round last year, even though he's a first base only guy playing at a small school. Chanel's put up phenomenal numbers. Just don't look at the Cape data. Not great Cape data. So I just have him as the guy who makes sense being on the board, and then it also gives them some ability to be flexible with their next few picks. Cleveland at 23. So the two guys to look at here, as I do think, it's mostly college. You have Yohandy Morales, who has gotten better as the year has gone on, and Brock Wilken, who is the big, strong, massive EV guy. And I know most Guardians Fans are thinking, well, Morales has lower K rate. It probably makes more sense for him. But what do we know about Cleveland? They might put the most value of any team in baseball on the Cape Cod. They draft Cape Cod performers up and down. Chase DeLauder, Hunter Gaddis, who's been with the team this year, a lot of recent, just about everyone they've seen on the Cape. Brock Wilken was a Cape MVP. He is not necessarily a typical guy, but he's a decent athlete, moves well. I think he is kind of moving up boards, and I think at this point in time, he makes a lot of sense for Cleveland. They like those Cape performers. I think of who's left, they take him. The Atlanta Braves. They kind of just take who's there, right? Like, this is a team that's not afraid to. Last year, they took some guys who were maybe not viewed as the highest of the high end. I don't know if I want to say overdrafts. I liked all of their picks, but they won't always go strictly based on the board. And if I'm going through a list and trying to figure out what they're going to do here, it's a little hard with Atlanta. I'll just be completely honest. They sometimes have a hard time figuring out what Atlanta is going to do. They have gone a little more pitcher heavy. They have gone a little more pitcher heavy these past few years. You look at the 3 prep arms a year ago. You look at the 2 recent Wake Forest pitchers. Would they go Joe Whitman, the lefty out of Kent? I think they might. I actually think this makes some sense. Whitman pitched 6 innings his first 2 years at Purdue. He is not necessarily viewed as a top 30 guy in this class, but he's starting to slide in the top 30 on mocks. For a class that doesn't have a bunch of great lefties, he's had 1 year of really a chance to shine. Kent is a good developmental program for pitching. They have a pitching coach who could have moved on to be a head coach or a pitching coach at a lot of other programs. Mike Birkbeck, he has no interest in that. He's just happy being a pitching coach. They have a really, when they lose their head coach, they keep their pitching coach for years and years. So they're in a good situation in terms of this past year of data. I think Atlanta has drafted some guys sometimes are a little bit higher than the expectations. So I think Whitman there makes sense. San Diego, there go the little ones. San Diego always goes for upside, sliding talent. They're going to go for a name value here. Who's the guy you're kind of surprised is still on the board? If I'm going through, I think it's Aiden Miller, right? That's the guy who's still on the board here. It's a bit of a surprise, just like with Lesko a year ago. They'll jump on the guy who was hurt. Probably should be off the board by now. Makes a lot of sense at this point in the draft. Going for ceiling, going for upside, going for someone with power potential. Yankees have been mostly conservative in the draft outside of Volpe. The only problem with conservative is there's not always necessarily someone to get, but I think Nolan Chanel would be someone they'd like if he slid. I think Yohandy Morales being on the board with a conservative drafting Yankees team is just, I'm going to put that on, shift it away. They like power guys as well. That makes sense. The Phillies have been prep heavy, and when you look at who's in charge there, what is he like? He likes athletic, up the middle, specifically outfielders, or pitching, big, strong pitching prospects. So I'm kind of between two guys. I know I haven't been doing the sleepers. I realize that, but it feels like Charlie Soto, the 17-year-old 6'5", 210 guy, would potentially make sense. I also think Blake Mitchell, who I realize probably should be off the board by now, sliding through would make a lot of sense. I think Mitchell's probably the highest rated guy. So actually, I'm going to have Mitchell to the Padres because that's the high ceiling pick to the Padres there, and they're constantly in need for catching. But Morales, and then to Philly, Dylan Head is the up-the-middle athlete. They took Justin Crawford last year. Just keep going with that type. That is the type. Houston Astros are 28. When you're looking at who is here and who is available, again, they're going to take a guy who's sliding, someone who they thought could be off the board, who should be gone. Maybe they're surprised is still here at this point in the draft. Walker Martin's probably going to be a popular one of those names and or players. Kevin McGonigal could be another one. where you're like, oh, I can't believe he is still available in this draft. I going through and just, thinking out loud. Oh, okay. So it's the problem with me not having my own list in front of me and using someone else's. So I'm going to switch things up. It's what everyone loves. Chase Davis should have gone to the Baltimore Orioles. I like that pick. I like that connection. So that's going to push Bryce Eldridge down the board to here. So I'm going to do a flip here. I'm going to have Chase Davis going at up. Great athlete. It's always hard to interpret data when that guy is a player in Arizona. Those Arizona environments are incredibly hitter friendly. Chase Davis, though, should be going much higher. And that's my own fault for not using my own list, for just being lazy, because I haven't fully put my list together of names. Davis to Baltimore, that pushes Eldridge down to this selection, which makes him, again, the kind of an easy pick for the Astros, who like power, they like EVs. Push it out, as it were. I think that makes a ton of sense with this selection here. So Seattle, Aiden Miller is one of these picks. Very easy with me changing my picks around all over the board now. He is one of the top players available. He is an easy player to go here with this selection. And I think Walker Martin, the shortstop from Colorado, he's a little bit older. They have not been afraid of age model guys. I'm trying to think of the Pittsburgh shortstop they took a year ago, who was 19 as well. Cole Young, who I liked, did not scare them off. So that is your top 30 picks. And then just to get every team in, I just want to pull up what pick we got for the Mets, and because that gives us 30. So you got Tampa, then the Mets. That's right. So if you come back around to Tampa, Kevin McConnell makes sense there. They've got the two picks pretty close to each other. Could probably make that work. And then the Mets. The Mets went for, they looked at the board, trying to figure out who slid. I mean, they liked Jet Williams, who was undersized a year ago. They took Kevin Prodder because he just fell to them. Out of curiosity, looking at the MLB list, the top player left on this board would be... Is it really? Did I really... No, there's no way. I just had 31 names and got almost identical. No, that can't be right. Who would be a Mets guy? Who would be the player that I kind of like, thinking about just what they've done? They went for power, EVs, connected data. I don't know how much pressure the front office is feeling, but it's not like, again, the draft can really affect that. I start to feel like this is kind of the Colton Ledbetter range. Could be someone interesting to talk or consider. I'm kind of also curious to see who pops. Jace Bohefrin. I feel like we're kind of getting closer to his range. If you're the Mets, right here at this point in time, I don't know. That is a tricky one, because I've kind of lined up all of the players I felt name-wise at high enough points in this draft. Maybe Ty Pete, the 17-year-old shortstop. They went with Chet Williams, who's pretty young, a year ago, who was an up-the-middle guy. Pete is a projectable player who's been kind of rising in the process. Georgia kids, it's always a benefit there as well. The Brewers, who is the best college bat for them? If I'm going, Jack Hurley still being on the board. They've gone for guys who have some swing and miss and good athletic tools. Brings you back to the Twins. If they decide to go with a prep arm, Blake Wolters is kind of interesting in this range. It's him or it's Travis Sikora. Sikora's a little bit older. He's already 19, so I think he's, Cameron Johnson's fascinating as a lefty. Cade Kuehler has some fans. Yeah, I think as of now for the Twins, I kind of like that idea of coming back around and taking Blake Wolters, which then you get to the Marlins, who were one of my most debated picks, and I had Max Clark going there. The conservative pick in this range for them, if Hurley's off the board, you're looking kind of the Jake Gedloff, Colton Ledbetter range, and I'm going to go with Ledbetter. He didn't do quite as dominant in the SEC as he did the rest of the year, but it's really good numbers, really good data, good translation points. So they go two outfielders. Hey, it's a team that has been struggling to develop outfielders, right? So Ledbetter here, and then the Dodgers to end it. Like, who is the Dodgers type of guy at this point in the draft? Who is the college performer who is maybe being underappreciated, or the prep talent who's kind of a tweener that maybe people are missing on, or just a good athlete that people are not smart enough to pay attention to? And I'm going to go with Bryce Matthews. He was I want to say did well on the Cape. I could be wrong, though. That's top of my head. He was, a very impressive athlete. He runs really well. He was a football player and a baseball player. He had, Max Anderson was the kind of the big name at Nebraska, and he had a huge year after a strong Cape. And Bryce Matthews might have been better than him. And he just feels like... So Bryce Matthews, it was the Northwoods is what he dominated. And good athlete, rising player, athletic. I'm saying athletic way too many times, but just feels like that type of the guy that the Dodgers grab because of what's present and figure out how to maximize. Bryce Matthews feels very much like a Dodgers type of selection. Cam or maybe Brandon Sprout would be the sleeper that I stopped kind of giving halfway through this mock. Yeah. What do people think? Make sure you comment below. Again, this is my personal channel, so if you want me to do more content like this, make sure you watch. Have a friend, subscribe, things like that will ensure that I am jumping in and doing a little bit more of my own content on here from time to time. Thank you to those who did jump in. High watermark of 5, but hey, I appreciate all y'all. Thank you to Zach and Landon who threw me some comments that I answered. And yeah, thank you for watching. Questions, I will respond to any question you post below, as well as ignoring anything that is mean. That is how I'm going to roll. But thank you all, and have a great day.